All right, video 8 here, we're going to talk about parallel lines again. So now that we're comfortable, or at least we've had an introduction with some of those vocabulary words when it comes to parallel lines, now we're going to talk about the algebra and maybe some different ways that the parallel lines can be drawn to make things a little bit more difficult. So today we're going to talk about setting up our equations using parallel lines. We're going to define and label the different angles using parallel lines. And then the new thing here, we're going to determine if two lines are parallel given angles. This is going to be the new one. This is kind of like the explanation piece. So that's important. But we're just going to jump right into it. I think I have about 5 questions to go through today. So bear with me, take some notes, and if you have questions, let me know. So first thing here, given that L and M are parallel in the diagram below, solve for the value of X. So we got these two angles down here. Now, like I said in the last video, parallel lines do not always have to be horizontal. If you are more comfortable with them being horizontal, by all means, take your paper, turn it sideways so that these two lines here are easier to read. All right, but we have these two angles. We have the 6x minus 25 and the 4x plus 15. What I notice about them is that they are inside of the parallel lines and they are on opposite sides of the transversal. These are going to be alternate interior angles. Now, if you go back to the last video and talk about what are they, or what are alternate interior angles, what do we know about them? They are congruent. So what I can do is set 4x plus 15 equal to 6x minus 25 so that I can figure out what value of x makes these two angles the same, or these two expressions the same. So I'm going to go through the algebra here. 2x equals 40, which means x equals 20. All right, if I wanted to find the actual value of those two angles, the question doesn't really ask for it, but we could plug it back in. 4 times 20 plus 15, which could be 80 plus 15, which would be 95 if we wanted those actual angles. All right, let's get on to the next question. So this one is a little bit more complicated because we have two different transversals. So we really need to highlight this picture, draw things separate if it makes it easier for you. Use the trace paper that we have in class, but we'll just get started. I'll try to highlight the best that I can on here, but we have X and Y are parallel. So these two lines are parallel. I like to extend them. Makes it a little easier to visualize. Now, transversals, I usually like to work one at a time, all right? But to find angle A, we actually don't need the parallel lines at all. What we can really focus on for angle A, I'm going to try to draw it separate, and hopefully you guys can visualize this with me. But just this part of the picture, if we draw, will make it a little bit easier for us to visualize what's going on here. So if you can see this picture in this mess over here, what you should notice is all three of these add to 180. So we're not really using the parallel line method. Sometimes they're just in there to make the picture a little bit more complicated or to find something else. But 70 and 30 is 100. 70 and 30 is 100, which means A has to be 80. They have to add to 180. So I know that A is equal to 80 degrees. All right? And again, that's a good start. That'll help us with this picture. Now, I'm going to try to just erase that part. Yep. So we know that this is 80. Now, the other thing going on here is we got to find B. Now, if I'm looking at angle B, what I notice about angle B is it only deals with the transversal of S. So I'm going to ignore the line of T. I don't need it. I'm really just going to focus on this one. So if I highlight that, and we'll do that one in red as well, and we'll see if we can kind of ignore the black line and see if that helps us. So we have this. So if this is angle B, what I do know is that it should be the same as this angle. These are going to be corresponding angles, right? Because they are both on the bottom left. They are both on this bottom left between our parallel line and our transversal. The key thing here is that this line doesn't really matter for this part of the question, but it's not going to be 30 or 80. It's actually going to be 30 and 80 together, which is going to be 110 degrees. Right now, that might be a little bit confusing. Like I said, if these diagrams get a little confusing, try to draw them separate. Come see me. We can trace some things out. We can use the whiteboards to help us in class. All right. I have a couple more questions down here to go through. All right, but try to go through them quickly here. So, are these following lines parallel? So when the question asks you if lines are parallel, what I want you to focus on is the angles. And what I usually try to do is I try to ignore half of the question. And what I will do is I will find these four angles because I don't need parallel lines to find these angles. I can use my vertical angles and my linear pair. I know that this is 100. I know that these are 80. You got to add up to 180 degrees. And then what I would do is I would do the same thing on this side. I would find that this is 100, this is 80, and that's also 80. So now, if I'm looking at this, do these two sets of angles match up with one another? So yes, they do. So the answer would be yes. Now, all you really need to pick out here is one of the vocabulary words. So they started us with these 200s, so I'm going to use that, and I would say yes, because if corresponding angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. Right? This explanation piece is a little new. It might be a little confusing. We'll definitely spend some time talking about this in class, but let's jump to the next one. We have a couple of these to do. It might start to help a little bit. So this one, again, same concept. I'm going to take these four angles and I'm going to find them. This is going to be 96 because they are vertical angles. Then I'm going to do 180 minus 96 and get that this is 84. Now, if you notice, not one of these four angles matches up with this 85. So I'm going to say, no, they're not parallel. Okay? Because none of the angles match. Right? There are no vocabulary words that make sense here. Our alternate interior angles are not going to be the same. Our alternate exterior angles are not going to be the same. If the lines are parallel, this 85 would match. Right? Since they don't, they're definitely not parallel. Right? Are the following lines parallel? Well, I know that this is 53, and then again, I would do 180 minus 53, get 127. Now, do any of these angles match with any of these angles? They didn't give us anything. So no, in this case, there's not enough information. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes it's not enough to prove what we want to prove. All right, last one. Which of the following lines are parallel? Again, I'm going to use this same concept. When I hear this question, this is what I'm thinking about. I'm going to find these four angles, hopefully find one that matches. So this is going to be 103. This is going to be 77. Now, right here, I already know the answer. I can see which ones match up. I don't have to find all of the other angles. These four are going to match with these four because of this 77. So I could say X is parallel to Z because if alternate exterior angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. All right, so again, that's just part of the parallel lines. It's just another addition. So we have two things going on here. We have our vocabulary words kind of proving that lines are parallel or being able to determine which set of lines are parallel, at least mathematically, not just by looking, because we do want to have some type of explanation. And then we have being able to set up equations based on the vocabulary words like we did in the very first question in this video. All right, so we have some more practice set up for this. We got our 5-question mastery check. If you have any problems, let me know.